I, 34M, think my wife, 32F, has been lying to me for months, and I'm starting to connect some really ugly dots. I don't even know where to start, so I'll just say this. My wife and I have been together for 7 years, married for 4. Up until recently, I would have told you we were fine. Not perfect, but stable. No huge fights, no dramatic breakups, no obvious signs of things falling apart. But looking back now, I think I missed a lot. She's always been a bit sharp. Like, not just sarcastic, but cutting. If I messed something up, even something small, she'd go straight for the jugular. I used to brush it off as, that's just her personality. But lately it's been getting worse. More frequent. More personal. About 3 to 4 months ago, things started to feel off in a way I couldn't explain at first. She began staying late at work. At first it was just this one project. Then suddenly it was multiple nights a week. When I'd ask about it, her answers were always vague or inconsistent. One night she'd say she was finishing reports, another time it was a team dinner, but when I'd casually ask about the people she was with, the details wouldn't line up. I remember one specific night. She came home around 11:30 p.m., smelling like perfume that definitely wasn't hers. When I pointed it out, she immediately snapped at me, said I was imagining things, and accused me of trying to start a fight out of nothing. That stuck with me. Then there were the small things. She started guarding her phone like it contained state secrets. Turning the screen away, taking it with her even to the bathroom, changing her passcode, which we used to share casually, no big deal. I asked her about it once. Calmly. She rolled her eyes and said, "Not everything is about you. I'm allowed to have privacy." Which, sure, fair, but the way she said it felt defensive. Almost rehearsed. And here's the thing that really got to me, she started picking fights over nothing. Like she wanted a reason to be angry at me. Like she needed to justify something. Last week, we had this argument about dishes. Dishes. It escalated so fast it didn't even make sense. She went from, "You forgot to wash a plate," to, "You're completely useless," in under 2 minutes. That wasn't normal. Even for her. At this point, I don't have proof of anything. Just this constant, gnawing feeling in my gut that something is very, very wrong. And I hate that feeling. Because part of me still wants to believe her. Part of me thinks I'm just being paranoid. But another part, the louder part lately, is starting to think I've been lied to for a long time. And I'm not sure I'm ready for what I might find out next. I wish I could say things stayed at that gut feeling stage for a while, but they didn't. It escalated fast. Like, way faster than I was ready for. A couple days after that stupid argument about dishes, she suddenly flipped a switch. Went from cold and irritated to weirdly nice. Not normal nice. Overcompensating nice. She made dinner. My favorite. Asked about my day. Even laughed at one of my dumb jokes, which she hasn't done in months. And yeah, for a moment, I almost let myself relax. Almost. But something about it felt off. Like she was following a script. That same night, she left her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to shower. Which never happens anymore. Ever. She's been glued to that thing like it's part of her body. I just stood there staring at it for a solid minute, arguing with myself. I'm not the type to snoop. I've always believed if you get to that point, something's already broken. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore everything that had been building up. So yeah, I picked it up. And of course, Face ID didn't work for me. She had changed that too. I felt stupid standing there holding it, like I'd already crossed the line and still got nothing out of it. So I put it back exactly where it was and tried to act normal when she came out. But here's where it gets weird. About an hour later, we're sitting on the couch watching TV, and her phone lights up. She was in the kitchen grabbing water, so I glanced at the screen without even thinking. Just a reflex. And I saw a name I didn't recognize. No contact photo. Just a name, The message preview was short, but enough to make my stomach drop. Miss you already? I swear my heart just stopped for a second. I didn't even realize I was staring until she walked back in and immediately noticed. Her whole expression changed. Not confusion. Not curiosity. Panic. Like pure, instant panic. She grabbed the phone so fast it was almost aggressive and said, "Why are you looking at my messages?" No. What's wrong? No explanation. Just straight to defense. I tried to play it off, said it just lit up and I saw it by accident. Which was true. But the damage was already done. I asked her, casually as I could, "Who's M?" And that's when the lying started. Not even hesitation. Just immediate. "Oh, it's just a coworker. Maria. We were talking about a project." Maria. Cool. Except, I've heard her talk about her coworkers plenty of times. There is no Maria. Or at least, there never has been before. And the message didn't sound like anything work-related. Not even close. I didn't push it right then. I could tell she was already on edge, and honestly, I needed a second to process what I just saw. But that was it. That was the moment something inside me shifted from, maybe I'm overthinking, to, something is definitely going on. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was that message. "Miss you already?" And the way she reacted, that told me more than the message itself. I think deep down, I already knew. I just didn't have the full picture yet. But I was about to start looking for it. The next morning felt unreal. You know that feeling when everything looks normal on the surface, but inside your head it's just noise. That was me. She was making coffee like nothing happened. Humming even. Like the night before didn't exist. Meanwhile, I'm standing there trying to act like I didn't see a message that basically confirmed my worst suspicion. I decided I needed to be careful. If something was going on, I couldn't just confront her with half-baked assumptions. She's too quick, too defensive. She'd twist it, shut it down, make me look crazy. So I said nothing. But I started paying attention. Really paying attention. That same day, she texted me around noon saying she'd be working late again. No explanation, just a short message. No emoji, no softness, just straight to the point. Something about that annoyed me more than it should have. So I did something I've never done before. I left work early. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well, which, honestly, wasn't even a lie at that point, got in my car, and drove straight to her office. The whole drive, I kept trying to convince myself I was being ridiculous. That I'd show up, see her car in the parking lot, maybe even catch a glimpse of her through the window working, and I'd feel like an idiot. I wanted that outcome. I really did. But when I got there, her car wasn't in the parking lot. Not anywhere. I drove around twice just to be sure. Checked every row like some paranoid creep. Nothing. At that point, my chest started tightening. Like I couldn't get a full breath. Okay, maybe she parked somewhere else, right? Maybe she had a meeting off-site. So I went inside. I felt so out of place walking up to the front desk, trying to sound casual while my heart was basically trying to punch its way out of my chest. I asked the receptionist if my wife was still working. She gave me this polite, slightly confused look and said, "Oh, she left a couple hours ago." A couple hours ago. I just stood there for a second, like my brain couldn't process it. I asked, "Did she say where she was going?" She shook her head. "No, sorry." And that was it. No big dramatic reveal. No smoking gun. Just absence. A lie so simple, so casual, it almost made it worse. I walked back to my car in a daze. Sat there for a while, just staring at the steering wheel. At that point, I wasn't even angry yet. Just hollow. Because now it wasn't just a weird message. It wasn't just a feeling. She had lied. Straight to my face. No hesitation. And the worst part? I still didn't know where she was, or who she was with, but I had a pretty good guess. And I wasn't sure I was ready to prove myself right. I didn't follow her. I want to make that clear, because part of me really wanted to. I sat in that parking lot for a good 20 minutes, engine off, just debating whether I should start driving around like some kind of desperate detective. But I didn't even know where to go. And honestly, I was scared of what I might find. So I went home instead. That drive felt longer than usual. My mind kept replaying everything: the late nights, the arguments, the sudden nice behavior, the message from and now this. A straight-up lie about being at work. By the time I got home, I had already started building scenarios in my head. None of them were good. I got inside, sat on the couch, and just waited. I didn't text her. Didn't call. I wanted to see what she would say when she came home. If she'd stick to the same story or change it. She walked in around 9:45 p.m., acting tired. Dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, gave me a quick, "Hey." Same routine as always. Like nothing was wrong. I asked, as casually as I could. "Long day?" She sighed, rolled her eyes a little. "Yeah. Meetings all day. I'm exhausted." "Meetings?" "Not. I left early." "Not. I had to go somewhere else." Just doubling down. I nodded. "At the office?" She didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, where else would I be?" That hit harder than I expected. Because now I knew for a fact she was lying, and she was doing it so easily. No stutter, no pause, no guilt. Just smooth. I felt this weird mix of anger and disbelief bubbling up, but I kept it in. I didn't want to explode without something concrete. Not yet. So I just said, "I actually stopped by your office today." That's when everything changed. Her body language shifted instantly. Shoulders tensed. Eyes flicked away for a split second. It was subtle, but it was there. "Oh?" she said, trying to sound neutral. "Why?" I wasn't feeling great. Thought maybe we could go home together. I watched her closely. She forced a small laugh. "You should have texted me. I was in meetings most of the day." Still sticking to it. I just nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's the thing. They told me you left hours earlier." Silence. Like actual, heavy silence. She froze for a second, then immediately went on the offensive. "Are you seriously checking up on me now?" she snapped. "What, you don't trust me?" There it was. Deflection. Anger. Turning it back on me. I stayed calm, but my voice got quieter. "I just asked a question." "No, you didn't," she shot back. "You went to my workplace behind my back like some paranoid freak. That's not normal." Paranoid freak. That stung more than I expected. I felt my patience slipping. What's not normal is lying about where you were. And then she did something that honestly caught me off guard. She smirked. Not a nervous smile. Not guilt. A smirk. "Well," she said, shaking her head. "You're really reaching. I told you I had meetings." Then I stepped out for a bit. "It's not a crime." Stepped out. For hours. No explanation of where. No details. Just brushing it off like I was the problem. I stared at her, trying to figure out if she actually believed what she was saying or if she just didn't care anymore. "Where did you go?" I asked. Simple question. She grabbed her phone, already walking toward the bedroom. "I'm not doing this right now. I'm tired." And just like that, conversation over. She shut the door behind her, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear now. She wasn't just lying. She was comfortable lying. And that scared me more than anything else so far. I didn't go after her. A few weeks ago, I probably would have. I would have knocked on the door, pushed for answers, tried to fix things right then and there. But something about the way she smirked, it flipped a switch in me. It wasn't just a lie anymore. It was the attitude. Like I was beneath the truth. Like I didn't deserve an explanation. So I stayed in the living room. Sat there in silence, staring at nothing, replaying that moment over and over in my head. And then, for the first time, I seriously considered that this might not be salvageable. That thought hit harder than anything else so far. 7 years? Just gone. I didn't sleep much that night. Again. At some point around 2 a.m., I heard the bedroom door open. Her footsteps were quiet, careful. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep on the couch. She walked into the kitchen. I heard the faint buzz of her phone unlocking. Then, whispering. Actual whispering. My heart started pounding so loud I was convinced she'd hear it. I couldn't make out everything, but I caught pieces. No, he doesn't know. I told you, it's fine. Stop overthinking. That was enough. More than enough. I felt this cold wave just wash over me. Not even anger this time. Just clarity. She wasn't just lying to me. She was reassuring someone else about it. After a couple minutes, she hung up. Walked back toward the bedroom, paused for a second like she was checking if I was still asleep, then went back in and closed the door. I waited a full 10 minutes before moving. Then I got up, quietly, and walked to the kitchen. Her phone wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. She had it with her. Always. I stood there in the dark, just breathing, trying to process what I just heard. Because at this point, it wasn't a suspicion anymore. It wasn't even just that message. It was a pattern. Lies. Deflection. Secret calls. Missing hours. And whoever M was, they weren't just some random coworker. They were close enough for late-night whispers. Close enough for, he doesn't know. That sentence kept echoing in my head. He doesn't know. I went back to the couch, but there was no point even trying to sleep. Instead, I started thinking. Not emotionally. Not impulsively. Logically. If she was lying this comfortably, if she was hiding this much, then confronting her without solid proof was pointless. She'd just keep twisting things, making me doubt myself. I needed something real. Something she couldn't talk her way out of. And yeah, I hate that it came to this. But that's when I made the decision. I was going to find out the truth. No matter what it took. I never thought I'd become that guy. You know the one. Checking timestamps, overanalyzing everything, looking for patterns in behavior like it's some kind of investigation board with red strings. But here I was. And the worst part? The more I paid attention, the more things didn't add up. Over the next few days, I kept things as normal as possible on the surface. I didn't bring up the argument again. Didn't question her. Didn't push. And she acted like everything was completely fine. Still a bit sharp, still quick to snap over small things, but otherwise calm. Almost too calm. Like she thought the storm had already passed. It hadn't. I started noticing patterns. She'd text less when she was at work, but the second she'd step out, bathroom, balcony, even just another room, her phone would light up constantly. Notifications she'd immediately hide. One night she went to bed early, said she had a headache, closed the bedroom door. About 15 minutes later, I walked past quietly and heard her laughing. Not just a small laugh, a real one. The kind I hadn't heard from her in months. That one hurt more than I expected, because it made me realize something I didn't want to admit. Whoever she was talking to was getting a version of her I hadn't seen in a long time. At that point, I knew I couldn't rely on chance anymore. I needed something concrete. So I did something I'm not proud of. The next morning, she was in a rush. Running late, stressed, snapping at me over nothing as usual. Grabbed her bag, her keys, and for once, just once, she forgot the old phone. It was in a drawer in the kitchen. An older model she used before upgrading a few months back. I'd completely forgotten it even existed. She used to keep it as a backup. still connected to Wi-Fi, still logged into some of her accounts, I assumed. My hands were actually shaking when I picked it up. I remember just standing there, staring at it, thinking, if I turn this on, there's no going back. But let's be real. There was no going back, anyway. So I turned it on. It took a minute to load, and for a second I thought maybe it'd be wiped or locked. But no. Home screen popped up. No passcode. I went straight to messages. Nothing unusual there. Mostly old conversations. Then I checked apps. That's when I saw it. A messaging app one didn't recognize her using before. Opened it. And yeah, there it was. A chat pinned at the top. Just a single letter as the name. My chest tightened instantly. I tapped it. And for a second, I actually hesitated. Because I knew, whatever was in that conversation was going to change everything. But I opened it anyway. The first thing I saw? Photos. Not even messages. Photos. And I swear, my stomach just dropped. Because it was her. Selfies. But not the kind she ever sent me. These were different. More intimate. More deliberate. Taken in our bathroom. Our bedroom. Sent to someone else. I felt this rush of heat and cold at the same time. Like my body didn't know how to react. I scrolled up. Messages started loading in. Flirty. Casual at first. Then, not so casual. Inside jokes. Nicknames. And then the one that hit like a punch to the chest. Last night was worth it. I just froze. Because that meant this wasn't just emotional. This wasn't just texting. This was real. Physical. And suddenly, all those late nights, all those meetings, all those hours she couldn't explain. They made perfect sense. I kept scrolling, even though every part of me was screaming to stop. And then I saw something that made it even worse. A message from her. He almost found out yesterday. Followed by, but don't worry, I handled it. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like the floor had completely disappeared under me. Because now I knew. For sure. No doubt. No denial. No maybe. She wasn't just lying. She wasn't just cheating. She was actively covering it up, and talking about me like I was some obstacle. And somehow, that part hurt the most. I don't remember how long I sat there. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been an hour. Time just stopped making sense. I was still holding her old phone, staring at that conversation like it might suddenly change if I blinked enough times. It didn't. If anything, it just kept getting worse the more I scrolled. There were weeks of messages. Maybe months. Hard to tell because at some point my brain just stopped processing dates. It wasn't just flirting. It wasn't just, we hooked up once and it was a mistake. No. This was a full-on relationship. They talked every day. Morning texts. Late-night calls. Dumb little updates about their day. Complaints about work. About me. Yeah. That part messed me up more than anything else. She complained about me constantly. Called me predictable, boring. Even said I was easy to manage. Easy to manage. Like I was some kind of background character in my own marriage. There was one message I wish I could unread. He thinks I'm just busy with work, lol. Followed by, I swear he'd believe anything if you say it confidently enough. And the reply? Good. Makes this easier for us. I actually laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny. Just one of those moments where something hurts so much your brain doesn't know what else to do. Because they weren't just sneaking around. They were comfortable. Confident. Like there were no consequences. Like I was never going to find out. I kept scrolling. I don't even know why. It was like I was punishing myself at that point. Then I saw his name. Not just She had sent a screenshot of something at one point, and his full contact name showed up. So now M had a face, a name, a real person. And yeah, I recognized it. Not personally, but enough. He worked in the same building as her. Different department. She had mentioned him once or twice in passing months ago, but never anything that stood out. Guess now I know why. There were also messages about meeting up. Specific places, dates, times. And suddenly, all those late nights weren't just vague lies anymore. They had exact locations attached to them. There was even one message from just a few days ago. Same place as last time? Her reply. Yeah. He'll think I'm working late again. That's when something in me finally snapped. Not in a loud, explosive way. Just quietly. Like a switch flipping. Because up until that point, there was still a part of me hoping, stupidly, that maybe there'd be some explanation. Some context that would make this less intentional. But there wasn't. Every message made it clear. She knew exactly what she was doing. She chose it. Over and over again. And then I saw something that made my chest tighten all over again. Photos of them together. Not explicit. Just normal. In his car. Smiling. Happy. Like a couple. And that's when it really hit me. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was living a second life. And in that life, I didn't exist. Or worse, I existed as a joke. I didn't confront her right away. I know that might sound crazy after everything I saw, but I needed time. Not to calm down, because honestly, I wasn't even angry in that explosive way anymore. It was something colder than that. I needed time to think clearly. Because this wasn't just, we need to talk. This was life-altering. So I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Closed the drawer. Sat down for a minute, just staring at the wall, trying to slow my breathing. Then I did something I didn't expect from myself. I went to work. Like a normal day. Answered emails. Sat through meetings. Nodded at the right moments. Even made a joke at one point. On the outside, I was completely functional. On the inside, it felt like everything had already ended. I kept replaying specific lines from those messages. Easy to manage. He'll believe anything. Last night was worth it. It was like my brain was stuck on a loop, forcing me to relive it over and over again. Around midday, my phone buzzed. Her. Don't wait up tonight. Late again. I just stared at the message for a long time. No explanation. No effort. Just the same script. And the worst part? Now I knew exactly what that meant. I typed out a response, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Eventually, I just replied, okay. That one word felt heavier than anything I've ever sent. Because it wasn't agreement. It wasn't acceptance. It was the last time I was going to play along. That afternoon, instead of going straight home after work, I made a different decision. I went to one of the locations I saw in their messages. A small place. Nothing fancy. The kind of spot you wouldn't think twice about. I got there early. Sat in my car across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Part of me was hoping she wouldn't show up. Even after everything I saw, there was still that stupid, desperate part of me that wanted reality to contradict it. It didn't. About 40 minutes later, her car pulled up. I recognized it instantly. And then, a few minutes after that, he showed up. Got out. Looked around casually. Then walked over to her car like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like they'd done it 100 times before. Maybe they had. I felt my chest tighten so hard I thought I might actually pass out. They didn't even go inside right away. He leaned into her window. She smiled. Smiled. That same smile I used to think was mine. They talked for a bit, then both got out and walked in together. Close. comfortable, like a couple. And I just sat there, watching. No more guessing. No more. Maybe. Just reality. Raw and undeniable. I don't know how long I stayed there after that. Long enough for the shock to settle into something else. Something heavier. Because seeing the messages was one thing. But seeing them together? That made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. That was the moment it stopped being "my wife is cheating on me" and became "my marriage is already over." I just hadn't caught up to it yet. I didn't go inside. I thought about it. For a split second, I imagined walking in, calling her out right there, watching her panic, watching him realize what he'd gotten himself into. But that would have been for. And weirdly, I wasn't there anymore. So I stayed in the car. Watched the door for a while like an idiot, as if they'd suddenly come back out and undo everything I just saw. They didn't. Eventually, I started the engine and drove away. No dramatic music. No tears. Just quiet. Too quiet. I went home, and for the first time in a long time, the apartment felt like I was walking into someone else's life. Her things were everywhere, shoes by the door, her jacket on the chair, a mug in the sink from that morning. Normal stuff. Except now it all felt fake. Like a set. I sat down at the kitchen table and just stared at nothing again, trying to piece together what the hell I was supposed to do next. Because here's the thing no one really tells you. Finding out is one thing. Deciding what to do after. That's the real nightmare. My phone buzzed again. Her. Still at work. Don't wait up. Same line. Same lie. I looked at that message and for the first time, I felt anger again. Not explosive. Not chaotic. Focused. Because now I knew exactly where she was. Exactly who she was with. And she was still choosing to lie to my face like I was too stupid to figure it out. I didn't reply this time. Instead, I did something I should have probably done earlier. I called a lawyer. Even just dialing the number felt surreal. Like I was stepping into a version of my life I never planned for. The conversation was straightforward. I didn't go into all the details. Just said I was married, things weren't working out, and I wanted to understand my options. Divorce. Assets. What documentation I might need. The guy on the other end sounded calm. Professional. Like this was just another Tuesday for him. For me, it felt like my entire life was being quietly dismantled in a 15-minute phone call. When I hung up, I just sat there again. But this time, something had shifted. For the first time since all this started. I felt a tiny bit of control coming back. Not over her. Not over what she did. But over what I was going to do next. And that mattered more than I expected. Later that night, she came home around the same time as usual. Same routine. Shoes off. Bag down. Casual. Hey. Like she wasn't just with someone else an hour ago. Like she hadn't been lying all day. I looked at her differently this time. Not with suspicion. Not even with hurt. Just clarity. She noticed it too. Paused for a second, narrowed her eyes slightly. What? I shook my head. Nothing. And for once, I didn't ask where she'd been. Didn't question the story. Didn't engage. Because I already knew the truth. And suddenly, her lies didn't have the same power anymore. That confused her. I could see it. She kept glancing at me, like she was trying to figure out what changed. But she didn't ask. And I didn't tell her. Not yet. Because now, this wasn't about catching her. This was about what I was going to do with the truth. And I had a feeling the next step was going to be a lot harder than anything so far. The next few days felt like I was living a double life. On the surface, everything looked normal. We ate dinner together. Talked about random things. Even watched a show one night like we used to. If someone walked in, they'd think we were fine. But inside my head? Completely different story. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. I was observing. Every word she said, every excuse, every little. I saw it for what it actually was. A pattern. A script. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. She kept doing the same things. Working late. Meetings ran over. Team dinner. And every single time, I already knew the truth. It got to the point where it almost felt predictable. Like she wasn't even trying that hard anymore. But here's the part that really messed with me. She also started being nicer again. Not constantly, but in these random bursts. Making me coffee in the morning. Sitting a little closer than usual. Asking how my day was with this soft tone I hadn't heard in months. At first, it confused me. Then I realized what it was. Guilt. Or worse, balance. Like she was trying to even things out, in her own head. Hurt me there, compensate here. And I hated how much it worked on me, even knowing everything. There was one moment that stuck with me. We were in the kitchen. Nothing special. Just a random. She walked up behind me, wrapped her arms around me for a second, rested her head on mine. Something she hadn't done in a long time. And my body just froze. Because for a split second, it felt familiar. Comforting even. And then my brain caught up. I remembered the messages. The photos. The way she smiled at me. And suddenly it didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt wrong. Like I was part of a lie. I gently pulled away and said I needed to grab something from the other room. She noticed. Of course she did. "What's with you lately?" she asked, a little edge creeping into her voice. There it was again, that sharpness. I shrugged. "Just tired." She looked at me for a second longer, like she didn't quite believe it, but didn't push. And that was new. Normally, she would have escalated, pushed harder, turned it into an argument. But now, she backed off. Which told me something important. She didn't want conflict right now. Because conflict meant risk. And risk meant she could lose control of the situation. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't just because of what she did. It was because I was starting to realize something uncomfortable about myself. I was already emotionally checking out. Not fully, but enough. The anger was still there. The hurt too. But underneath it, there was distance growing. And I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Because part of me wondered, if I'm already pulling away like this, is there even anything left to save? Or am I just waiting for the right moment to end it? A few days later, I decided I couldn't just sit around anymore. I needed answers. Closure. Something solid before I made any move. So I called one of her coworkers, someone I trusted, someone who might have noticed her weird schedule changes. I didn't explain everything. Just casually asked about her recent late nights, and if she'd seen her hanging out with anyone outside of work. The coworker hesitated for a moment, then said something that made my stomach sink. "Oh yeah, she's been meeting someone. Not official work stuff. Just personal." I froze. Just like that. A stranger at work confirmed exactly what I already knew. I thanked them, hung up, and just sat in silence for a long time. Because now it was undeniable. There was no maybe. No, she's stressed. No excuses. She was cheating. She had been cheating for months. And the thing that hit me the hardest? It wasn't just about the cheating. It was about how calculated she had been. Every lie, every story, every late night, it was deliberate. She was aware of what she was doing, aware of the damage she was causing, and yet she did it anyway. That realization, it cut deeper than anything else. That night, I confronted her. Not yelling, not dramatic, just calm. I sat her down at the kitchen table. "I know what you've been doing," I said. Her reaction was typical. Sharp. Defensive. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, rolling her eyes. I slid my phone and the old device across the table. This. Every message. Every lie. Every late night. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Then she laughed. A bitter, sharp laugh. "You went through my stuff?" she said. Her voice was cutting. "Seriously?" I felt my chest tighten. I didn't want to, but I had to know the truth. She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Fine. You know. Congratulations. Happy now?" I swallowed the surge of anger rising in me. "No. I'm not happy. I'm hurt. I'm done being lied to. You've been lying to me for months." Her response? Almost casual. "I didn't think you'd notice. Honestly, you're way too predictable." Predictable. Easy to manage. The words from the messages echoed in my mind. And that was it. I realized in that moment that there wasn't a version of this conversation where she would admit guilt, apologize sincerely, or make it right. Because for her, the problem was never her actions. The problem was me finding out. And that was the cruelest part. It wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation. And it was intentional. I sat back, finally letting myself breathe. My heart was racing, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. I knew what I had to do next. And for the first time since this all started, I felt like I was making the choice, not her. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Not lighter. Not relieved. Not even fully angry. Just resolute. I made a list. Not of what she did. Not of how I felt. Not of her lies. A list of what I needed to do next. Step 1. Protect myself. Legally, emotionally, financially. Step 2. Set boundaries. No more casual interactions. No more pretending everything's fine. Step 3. Decide if reconciliation was even possible. Honestly, I wasn't sure. Not yet. When she came into the kitchen, I didn't greet her. Didn't ask how she slept. Didn't comment on her coffee. She noticed. Her sharpness returned immediately. "What's with you?" she asked. I looked at her calmly. "We need to talk. Later." Her face changed. Not defensive. Not surprised. Just worried. "About what?" "Everything," I said. She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath, but I didn't catch it. She went about her morning like nothing was wrong, but I could see the tension in her movements. That afternoon, I met with the lawyer I had called earlier. I gave them every piece of information I had: messages, timelines, patterns. I wanted to understand my options. Custody, assets, living arrangements. I didn't sugarcoat anything. Walking out of that office, I felt empowered. Not because I was going to punish her, not because I was angry anymore, but because I finally had clarity. I knew what my next steps would be, and I wasn't waiting for her to make them for me. That evening, she tried to talk. Tried to make small talk over dinner, laughed at something on TV, even complimented me on my cooking, a gesture she'd never made before. I just nodded, listened, but didn't engage. She noticed, of course. She always notices. "You're different," she said. "Yeah," I replied simply. She didn't press further. Not that night. And honestly, I didn't care if she did. Because by now, I wasn't negotiating my feelings with her anymore. I wasn't hoping she'd change. I wasn't hoping for apologies. I was thinking about me. My life. My future. And for the first time in months, it felt like I was steering the ship. The betrayal still stung, and it would for a long time. But now, it wasn't the storm. It was the lesson. And I was ready to move forward, one deliberate step at a time. The following days were quiet. Too quiet, actually. She tried a few times to engage. Little texts, playful nudges, even one "I miss you," thrown in casually. But I ignored them. Not out of spite, but because I needed space to think. To process. to separate myself from someone who had been so deliberate in hiding another life from me. I kept myself busy. Work, long walks, old hobbies I'd abandoned, even reconnecting with the few friends I hadn't seen in months. Every small action felt like reclaiming a part of me that had been lost under her lies. Then came the first confrontation I'd been dreading. Not with her, she still wasn't talking about it, but internally. The question I couldn't avoid anymore. Do I try to save this marriage, or do I let it go? I thought about the early days. The laughter. The shared dreams. The late night talks. I remembered why I fell in love with her in the first place. And then I remembered the last months. The lies, the deception, the emotional manipulation. I realized something painful. No amount of "I'm sorry" or sweet gestures could undo what she chose to do. At that point, it wasn't just about trust. It was about respect. And she had made it clear, time and again, that I wasn't worthy of either. I felt a strange kind of relief when I finally accepted it. Not joy, not happiness, just clarity. I made a decision. I would end it. Not with anger. Not with a dramatic scene. Not with humiliation. I would end it on my terms. I started planning the practical side. Finances, living arrangements, legal steps. But I also started planning the emotional side. How to detach myself from someone I still cared for, who had broken me in ways I hadn't realized were possible. The hardest part? Accepting that love wasn't enough. That sometimes people change, or reveal who they truly are, and there's nothing you can do to save it. I started writing down my thoughts, my emotions, my memories, both good and bad. A way to process, to grieve, to remember without being consumed. And as I wrote, I realized this was my healing. Not revenge. Not confrontation. Just reclaiming myself from someone who chose a different path. Because at the end of the day, that's all I could control. My actions. My choices. My life. And I intended to take it back. It wasn't going to be easy. But for the first time in months, it felt like I had hope again. The final confrontation was inevitable. I knew it, she knew it, even if either of us admitted it out loud. A few days later, I told her we needed to talk. No sugarcoating, no small talk, no dancing around it. She rolled her eyes, gave that sharp, impatient look, but followed me to the living room anyway. I didn't start with accusations. I didn't list every lie, every message, every betrayal. I didn't need to. She already knew I knew. Instead, I spoke calmly, deliberately. "I know everything," I said. Her eyes flickered. Just a tiny hesitation. Then the mask returned. "Everything? That's dramatic. You really think you know everything?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I know enough. And what I know is this: I can't stay in this marriage. Not with lies, not with deceit, not with someone living a double life. I can't. And I won't." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're leaving? Over this? Really?" "Yes," I said. "Not because I'm angry, not because I want revenge. Because I deserve honesty. Because I deserve respect. And you've chosen otherwise." She paused. For once, she didn't snap, didn't deflect, didn't lie. She just stared. I could see the realization sink in. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was shock. Maybe a little fear. I continued. "I'm going to move forward. I'm going to heal. And I want you to understand something. This isn't about you anymore. This is about me taking my life back." Her shoulders slumped slightly, and for the first time in months she looked small, vulnerable. But she didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She just looked at me, and I realized she might never truly understand the pain she caused. I took a deep breath. "We'll handle the practical things, the legal things, the separation. But emotionally, I'm done negotiating with you. That chapter is over." And just like that, it was over. No shouting. No chaos. Just clarity. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling a strange mix of grief and